Hello, everybody. This is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3, broadcasting out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. But we are all over the world thanks to the internet and all of these great platforms that we have. God bless internet platforms. And you can also find us on Roku, uh, Facebook, YouTube, X, and other internet platforms out there. You can find my YouTube channel at Bart Sharp 1. So I don't know if you're already listening. I guess that's kind of futile to tell you that. Uh, anyway, today we have a really cool show today and unusual show today because our guest today, Barbara Brodsky, she's the founder and guiding teacher of the Deep Spring Center for Meditation and Spiritual Inquiry. She has been practicing meditation since 1956. That's a long time, folks. An ordained interfaith minister, she teaches insight, vipassana meditation, and non-dual awareness practices deriving from the Dzogchen traditions. Barbara's teachings and channeling of Aaron, that's Aaron, from her home in Ann Arbor, Michigan, are appreciated by people of all faiths around the world. She is an author of several books called Human, another Present, Kindness and Freedom, another Cosmic Healing, and one that I have particularly enjoyed. In fact, this is why I asked Barbara to be on the show, is this book, The 47 Stories of Jesus That You've Likely Never Heard. And I highly recommend this book. It gives you a perspective of Jesus that's interesting, a story, but also a description of what life must have been like back then. Not so glorious like the Bible and such, but when you read it, you really get it, how powerful it is, and how it just feels like this is a more of an honest rendition of Jesus. And I've read a lot of channel books on Jesus, and I'd say this is one of the top ones that I have ever read. High recommendations. And Barbara's new book, The Path of Clear Light, is something what we're going to be delving in today. If I could compare it with any book of its complexity and intricacies, and something you have to study and almost like take it into your heart as you read it. And it's very comparable to something like A Course in Miracles, or one of my favorite books of all time, The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. I always like giving Richard a kudo. Great book. But it has that type of depth to it that changes you as you understand it. There's very few books that do that. Barbara, you can find her stuff if you go to www.deepspring.org. It's the Deep Spring Foundation, actually, out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. So all of that is really amazing stuff. And this show is going to be a bit unusual in that Barbara is deaf. She lost her hearing as a mother during childbirth, and so it just doesn't seem to slow her down, because here she is channeling this a magnificent being, working on books, teaching classes, being a presence all over the world. So we're going to have a little bit of an interesting dialogue. And so off we go. I'm going to bring Barbara back on the stage. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, thank you, Bart, for the lovely introduction, and I'm glad to welcome all who are listening here. As Bart said, I'm profoundly deaf. I've been deaf for over 50 years.
Yeah.
Living with silence has really changed my life.
How how does deafness change your life?
I lost my hearing when my first child was born. He's going to be 54 this spring, so it's a long time ago. I had normal hearing before that. So suddenly I was deaf and I felt myself cut off from everything. Isolated, abandoned. People were loving. I've my husband and I will have been together 60 years this month. So loving husband, loving friends, but just this circle of deafness cut off. And it led me into a much deeper spiritual exploration of separation and non separation.
Mm.
I have been meditating since I was a teenager, but meditating to try to get things quiet in my life. Now I needed to go to a place of finding what is connected and how I get into this delusion of separation. And that set the foundation.
Wow. So you have a new publication uh, where you and Aaron have channeled a book called The Path of Clear Light, Stepping Out of the Shadows. Can you tell us a little bit about that book? Just the overview. I've been speaking about it to the audience a little, but I leave it with you.
I'd be happy to. I love this book. I love the way it came about. So let me tell you that first. I was out at my cabin in the woods for the summer. The first day, Aaron said, I'd like to channel a book this summer. I said, fine. Usually I would channel, it would be transcribed. He said, just sit at your computer and type what I'm saying. 1 page a day, maybe 2. But some pages only have a half dozen words. He said, do not go back and read what we said before. Next morning, sit down, I'll dictate to you, type it out, put it aside. Tomorrow, a little bit more. So it just poured forth from Aaron. Path of Clear Light. And this book is actually at this point 7 or 8 years old, and we're working on a new book, Path of Sacred Darkness, and the non-duality of light and darkness. What is sacred light? What is darkness? In a realm of no duality, how can we distinguish between light and darkness?
Interesting topic. I think that darkness is just as important as the light in some ways. It doesn't mean evil, it just means darkness.
Correct. Because there is no ultimate darkness. We talk about the ultimate, and in meditation, sometimes we can get into an experience of what the Buddha calls the unconditioned. He says in one sutra, monks, there is an unborn, undying, unchanging, uncreated. If it were not so, there would be no reason for our lives. This to me is as good a description as any of God. It doesn't matter what we call it. So I think of it as essence or source. This unconditioned, this source, must contain everything. It contains light, it contains darkness, it contains spaciousness and contraction, it contains fear, and it contains love. We look at the unconditioned essence, which is the light and the darkness, the love and the fear. And we don't say this is good or this is bad, simply this has arisen out of certain conditions: fear, hatred, anger. And when the conditions cease, this will cease, leaving us with the original light and love. And we can experience this in meditation, which is what's so beautiful.
How I love that. And this is so much about your book is the unconditioned. It's a central theme, as you call it. What? Let's see. So, how did coming up with a question? Can you explain how that applies to people with?
There are lots of questions, eternal questions.
Okay. So, tell us more about the unconditioned, though, because that's such a important theme to the book. How do we practice to get there, to learn it?
Thank you, Bart. Okay. At Deep Spring, we teach several basic practices, but the two central ones, one derives from Buddhism, Vipassana. The word Vipassana means see it, to see. Vipassana is a deeper see. And sometimes in our times called mindfulness, to be present with what has arisen into our experience. To stay present with it and watch, and if we watch it, it dissolves. A cloud blows it, then it's raining. Then the wind blows, the cloud blows away, the rain stops. We begin to see in meditation how everything in the conditioned realm arises when the conditions are present for it to arise. And when the conditions cease, it will cease. It arises, it passes away. It arises, it passes away. The challenge is that some of it is pleasant and some of it is unpleasant. When it's pleasant, we like it. That's fine. When it's unpleasant, we don't like it. That's fine too. When we don't like it, strong aversion arises and a sense of separation. Get this away from it. When it's pleasant and liking arises, if we go beyond liking, we move into grasping, and then we move into separation again. It's at these places of separation that we create karma. If there's no self, if there's just what I call awareness, noting pleasant, unpleasant, even liking or disliking, but no separate self, just arising and passing away, then we don't get caught up in karma. We don't keep repeating it. With our meditation practice, we can start to see the places where we habitually get stuck. Now, for me, with my deafness, what I learned very early on is one of the places I got stuck was a place of feeling unloved, imperfect, abandoned. And so my meditation led me to explore, when does a feeling of abandonment come up? And then fear or grief and separation and trying to fix, trying to be loved. It's just all arising from conditions. When I come back to this central place in my heart, there's nobody that was ever loved or not loved, although it's happened a million times. There's no body, no separate self. It's
Mhm.
just moving through. And at that point of awareness, seeing how this myth arose that I could ever really be bad or conversely good, I just am. I'm present. I'm an expression of the divine, as you all. We are love. And when we start to know ourselves as love, we stop being so reactive to the things that are unpleasant in our life, to the things that have grabbed us and pushed us one way or another forever.
Sending a question on the chat, and I will say it. Someone who has been verbally attacking me, and this is true, this is happening in my life, privately and publicly attacking me. How would I approach this using the tools of the unconditioned?
Great question, Bart. First, you have to acknowledge this is happening in your life experience, and it's unpleasant and it's scary, and you don't want it. And then we have to move to compassion for ourselves and for the other person. The part of us that says, I should be okay with this. Well, why should I? It's scary, it's unpleasant. May I have compassion for myself. I can't have compassion for the other. I can't really hear the other's perspective unless I can have compassion for myself. And then from that ground of compassion, we begin to see literally how anger and fear and separation arise and that they have no solid substance. We stop getting caught up in that field. There's a lot more spaciousness. We can practice this with anything in our lives, body pain, whatever it may be. It's unpleasant. We don't want it. Or it's pleasant and we want it. Grasp, aversion. And just finding that place that can really see it's arising and passing away, arising and passing away. And I'm not going to stop the conditions out of which it arises, but I don't have to be reactive to it. One of my books is called, one of Aaron's books is called No Chain at All. In Buddhism, there's something called a chain of dependent origination, which is what I've been talking about. Something arises, it's pleasant or unpleasant. If it's pleasant, liking and then grasping, unpleasant, disliking and strong aversion. And according to the Buddha, and it's true, this chain continues. But when we wake up to a certain point and cease knowing ourselves or believing ourselves to be this separated self, then there's no chain at all. The title of the book. You have to read the book to get the rest of it.
Of course. I have another question I'm sending you.
I don't know where you're sending it, but if you say
on
it,
chat, I'll just say it.
in the chat.
It's so when you have a fear that's confronting you like that, and this is personal experience, and I want to see if you agree and if you would tell more about it. You face the fear, you look at it square in the eye to see what you're really afraid of. And I think that that's what people avoid doing, is trying to see what you're really afraid of.
It's partly what we're afraid of, but even more the question, who is afraid? Over and over, I keep moving into the solid self. I'm sure you and most of the listeners have seen the movie Groundhog Day. He keeps finding himself in this solid self trying to fix it until finally he shakes loose from that and starts to see that it's just this collection of experience. That doesn't mean we don't exist, but what am I when I'm not busy being this personality self who is either afraid or determined not to be afraid, reactive or determined not to be reactive? Who am I?
Yes, that's a great explanation. Thank you. Um,
Bart, may I share something here?
Please.
When I first lost my hearing, I took it very personally. I was very afraid, angry. Why me? I just felt brutalized by the world. I meditated. My meditation was more to lead me into a place of if I just push the world away and come into this silent place, pushing everything else out. But that's not what meditation is about. Meditation is about knowing our intimate connection with everything, not separation. So I prayed for help. And I don't know what kind of help I was expecting, but I was really suffering. I went into my living room to meditate early one morning, and I could see and feel the energy of somebody sitting there. It didn't wasn't somebody with substance, and yet I could see them. And of course I was startled. I got up, I went out to the kitchen. I thought either it's real or I'm hallucinating, and I'm not sure which one is more scary. I had a cup of tea. I went back into the living room. He was still sitting there. So I said, "Who are you and why are you there? Why are you here?" He said, "You asked for help. I'm here to help. How are you going to help me?" I couldn't hear him in my ears. I'm deaf. But I heard his thoughts. He said, "You asked for help. You're suffering. Let's start there." I said, "I'm suffering because I'm deaf." He said, "No, you're suffering because you're so angry at being deaf. And you allow the experience of deafness to bring you into this place of isolation, abandonment, and so forth. So let's just look at it." He changed my meditation, not just to try to quiet the mind, but what I've been explaining, to watch how objects arise into our experience, are pleasant or unpleasant, bring liking or disliking, grasping or aversion, this somebodyness, and how we move past all of that. It changed everything for me enormously. I knew nothing about channeling back then. A friend said to me, "Could I talk to him?" I said, "Sure." "Go ahead." She said, "Oh, I can't hear it." So Aaron was the name he gave me. Actually, the first name he gave me was just teacher. But then finally, Aaron. He said, "Just listen and say what you hear." Somebody said, "You're channeling." What's channeling? In those days, Bart, I was a sculptor. I taught sculpture at the university here, U of M. I loved my work. I wasn't looking to do anything else. But I found so many people coming and saying, "Can we talk to Aaron?" And clearly, this was my path to awaken. So it's been a great blessing to channel Aaron in this way. And everything I am sharing here is just what Aaron has taught me through these decades.
Well, we're blessed to have Aaron in this world and blessed to have him talking with you. Uh, can you tell us a little bit more about Aaron before we have a channeled session with Aaron?
Sure. He tells us in his final human lifetime in the 1500s, he was a Buddhist monk in Thailand. That was the lifetime in which he awakened. But before that, he has lived numerous human lifetimes, including, you mentioned, 47 stories. He was a man named Nathaniel in the time of Yeshua, Jesus. And he's mentioned in the Bible. Nathaniel was Jesus' slightly older, a few years older boyhood friend. And he comes into the Bible a couple of times. So he's lived a number of human lifetimes. He's at this point, there's no karma, there's nothing to draw him back into a new human incarnation. He chooses for various reasons, because, in part, just because I said, fine, I'm happy to do this, to speak through me. In the beginning, conscious channeling, and now trance channeling, which means I release my consciousness from the body. Aaron comes into the body, and there's literally here in my body. I'm not here. I have no idea what he's saying. I'm not present. So we have taught like this all over the world.
Mm.
He's what I call an old soul with an intention to help us humans move from the place where we're kind of stuck, positive, negative, fear, love, self, emptiness, to help us find a deeper truth to our being, to understand why we're here and how to do what we came to do. He's an immensely loving being, very wise. And if he doesn't resonate for you, that's fine. Let it go.
That's wonderful. We have a few comments. Uh, Julie Evans says evening, and Garden Goddess says amazing. That's an amazing story. Hey, ladies. Glad you're here. I wanted to. We're right at the midpoint, and Barbara will be channeling Aaron in a minute or so. But I wanted to let everybody know that I'm Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And our guest today is Barbara Brodsky, author of 47 Stories of Jesus. I think it's one of my top 10 books of the last 5 years. And I've read a lot of books. I like this book a lot. And her latest book, The Path at Clear Light. You can find Barbara at wellspring.org. So without any more hesitation, Barbara, would you be willing to bring in Aaron and share Aaron's wisdom? We had talked about this question. I'm just going to read it. How do you see yourself or others on this path of consciousness, helping to evolve their vibration of consciousness? Not only with themselves, but with the people on the earth and beyond earth. Because it begins with ourselves, but it's connected with everybody. And then it goes beyond to these higher realms of consciousness. And that can be a lot of things. And I'm very curious to see what Aaron brings forth.
Thank you, Bart. Aaron will come in. Before I release my consciousness from my body and invite another entity to come into my body, I make a very clear statement. I am here in service to love and to the light. Non-harm to every being, harm to no being. I consecrate this mind, body, and spirit to the light. I open only to that which comes in service to love and intention to non-harm. So I make that as a very clear statement to help protect my body and to make sure that nothing negative comes into the body. This is a very important part of it. So I'm going to do that. Bart, I'm looking at your words on my screen. We are Deep Spring Center, not Wellspring. Deep Spring.
Okay,
So
I'll change that.
when we first were giving ourselves a name, I was looking at this deep spring that is not my deep spring, but the deep spring, the infinite deep spring of love. And to be a center that supports the opening into that deep spring. Deepspring.org.
Yes.
This is Barbara. Some of you may have a sense of when Aaron has come in, others will not. And some of you may think nothing happened. She's imagining it. That's fine. If the words are useful to you, use them. If not, toss them. That's all that matters. My blessings and love to you all. I am Aaron. As Barbara has said, you do not need to believe I am real. Is what I'm saying useful to you? Let's start with a question. Who are you? A favorite workshop that I offer, I call Angels in Earth Suits. You are angels. Yes, you're humans. That's fine. And perhaps in the past, you've been a dog or an elephant or a tree or a flower or a ladybug. These are just the outer piece. You are angels. You are divine light, moved into some kind of form, a temporary form, in order to bring consciousness into this earth plane and to heighten loving consciousness to release negative consciousness. Through many lifetimes, you've experienced both, sometimes more caught up in the separated self and with fear, sometimes more deeply connected to everything and wanting to be of service. When I say of service in the world, let me expand this for a bit. You are humans here on this planet called Earth, in this solar system. You are so much more. You are within this universe, within a megaverse. You are so much more. At the heart of it, all of this is that which I call polarity. If we have, I don't have a flashlight battery here, but if this was a battery, we'd have a positive and a negative pole. But the battery contains both positive and negative. It must contain both. If I cut it in half, each half contains positive and negative. As an awakened human, there will still be some negativity, but there will no longer be self identification with it. There will no longer be fear when anger arises or greed. Just say, "Oh, hello, anger. Hello, greed. Come have a seat. What have you come to teach me about?" And then we can hold it, not separating from it, but seeing this has arisen out of conditions and it does not define me. Here is anger, here is greed. The question is, how do I respond to it? That which is more caught in the negative polarity might respond to anger with more anger, or to greed by pushing it away. Or it might respond by holding the anger and self identity with it, becoming the strong, angry one. That which is more positively polarized. And remember, we're talking about the middle, not way out there, the middle. Moving toward positive polarity is increasingly able to say, anger has arisen. Different catalysts in this moment, anger has arisen. I will take care of my anger. I will not identify with it. I will not try to fix it. I will not enact it on others. I will hold space for it because it has no permanent reality. It has arisen from conditions. And when the conditions cease, it will cease. This is part of what I speak about in the path of clear light and also in my book, Yum. Letting go of identity, of I am the good one or I am the bad one. Who are you? Your world right now is in a transition from what we call a third density into a higher density planet. And I'm not going to explain those terms. They're in my books, they're in many metaphysical books. The question is the world going to evolve into a higher density, positively polarized planet, or a higher density, negatively polarized planet? That of, let's just say, that which aligns itself with darkness, which draws its power from fear and hatred, would like the earth to evolve into negative polarity. You who are listening, I would guess that almost all of you, maybe all of you, are listening because you hold the intention to help Earth evolve into a positively polarized planet, to bring more love and light to the places of darkness, fear, greed, and hatred. And you keep doing that by compassion, by mindfulness, and by what I call resting in awareness. The simplest way I can define that phrase is to say, when a fear arises, that which is aware of fear is not afraid. This is not a denial that fear is present. Fear is the consciousness, the mundane consciousness. Who is this one, this expanded light being who is not afraid? Increasingly, you become able to rest in that essence of yourself without negating the reality that in this moment fear has arisen. It's okay that fear has arisen. You're not reactive to it. This goes into a much longer teaching of consciousness, mundane consciousness, supramundane consciousness. It's more than you need to know, more than I can talk about in the limited time we have. It's in many of my books. I would especially direct you to Barbara's book, Cosmic Healing, which is about her own healing and awakening journey. And she is not saying she's fully awakened, just on a path to awaken. And I would direct you to the Aaron Kuo dialogues, in which I spoke at great length over many sessions with my spirit friend Kuo. Some of you may be familiar with the raw material from Kalaruka. Kuo was channeled. Carla is no longer with us, but Kuo was channeled by Carla and is one step down from the higher energy of Ra. So Kuo and I became very good friends and had some wonderful dialogues about what is human existence about. Kuo looking at it from the perspective of a being who has never been human, and me from the perspective of a being who has been human many times. So those are a few of my favorite of our books. Bart, I could go on talking for hours. Perhaps I've answered your question sufficiently here. I am Aaron.
Well, thank you. That was Barbara Brodsky channeling Aaron as she's gave some great wisdom about a lighter earth versus a more negative, denser earth. And we are on the crossroads of becoming one or the other.
I am Aaron, and please be aware it's got to go one way or the other.
Okay.
Positive polarity or negative polarity. And that path is up to each of you.
Yeah.
This is why I am here. Because it is my belief and hope that there are enough of you choosing a positive polarity that the earth can move into this beautiful positive space.
So, as an individual, we wish to create a space of unconditioned so great in us that we are not affected by we become that becomes our primary self. Negativity will always be around us, but we're so strong we're not responding to it. We just know it's there. And that builds something much greater in the world. That's one of the best ways we can promote a greater planet, a more positive planet.
Your planet is giving you forest fires and earthquakes and floods and dramatic environmental conditions. Think of the forest fire. Think of the fire energy in you, the element of fire. Each being has all the elements within themselves. When the element of fire becomes high in you, when there's anger, what do you do with that? Do you pour it off on others and build up a more fire? Or do you bring in something to balance the fire? Now, what if millions upon millions of people mastered the ability to attend to the arising of an imbalance of fire in themselves? With kindness, not shaming themselves, kindness. Brought in what would balance that fire. And then when there's a huge forest fire, brought that same energy and balancing of the elements out to the fire. I don't mean literally walking into the field of the fire, but energetically. This can change everything.
Yes, it is.
Capacity.
It is that interesting. We're having these fires mostly in America, and America is very fiery in anger right now. Uh, that's a great insight.
It's not just fire, but all of the elements. Each element contains all the other elements. It's not
Mm.
just too much fire bringing water, but within the fire element itself, which you need. You can't live without fire element in yourself. But is that fire element balanced in terms of earth, air, fire, water, ether? If one becomes excess, do I not say shame on me, but just, fire is getting too big. I will ground it. Maybe go out and do some gardening, get my hands into the earth, or weed in the stream. Do things that help ground the fire element and balance. And then I can envision the place where the fires are flaming across the earth and hold that fire and say, I choose to help ground and balance that immense conflagration. Not me. Wow, look what I can do. Just me as human. The gift of being human. And this is why you are truly human. With its free will, has the possibility to do so much.
I can't hear you.
Beings all
Yes.
over. I use the term multiverse because it's not just your universe. Beings throughout the multiverse are looking to see if beings with free will and a heavy mass, not just energetic beings, but beings of heavy mass, if such beings can make this shift into positive polarity. The fact that you are here as human means you've agreed to come in and try to support this effort. And beings are watching
Mm.
and hoping with you, in many cases supporting. And you can do it. I have full confidence that you can do it.
Can I ask a question?
Of course,
So to meditate and find that balance with all elements and such is one important strategy. Should we try to take that balance and send it out to everybody on the planet to help influence that vibration to be more widespread?
not quite, but every being, from the tiniest one cell plant, every being has free will. You do not send so much as offer. You say, I hold this out as available to you if it will support your highest intentions and evolution. And if it says no, then you don't withdraw it. You just say, well, I'll hold it here. If you change your mind, it will be here. No force, always respecting each being's free will. Or else you simply become part of that negativity, which disrespects others' free will. May I add something here, Bart?
Please.
We spoke of Vipassana practice. Barbara spoke of this. But we also teach pure awareness practice. With pure awareness, we watch how thoughts and emotions and sensations arise and pass away. And Barbara asked the question earlier, made the statement, that which is aware of fear is not afraid. That which is aware of anger is not angry. What is this awareness? It's important that we begin to distinguish this from mundane consciousness. I touch something, fingers touch it. It may be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. If it's pleasant, I like it. If it's unpleasant, I dislike it. This is consciousness. I smell the smell of a skunk. For me, it would be unpleasant. For us, another skunk may be pleasant. This is mundane consciousness. A thought arises and passes away. Mundane consciousness. That which is aware of the arisings of sensation, of thought, of anything, is awareness. In your country's history, the Native Americans used to call it grandmother or grandfather awareness. Very different than consciousness. It's never my awareness or your awareness. It is the awareness. We can practice this. I don't remember if it's in Human or Path of Clear Light. I talk about just sitting out under a tree, eyes open. Allowing the boundaries to fall away. Merging with not just the tree, which is a solid object, seeing, eyes seeing the object, but the sky, which is also a solid object. Until tree and sky dissolve. There's just spaciousness. There's form, but it has no ultimate reality. That tree, it's constantly changing. The sky has no ultimate reality. Everything is constantly changing. You open into this, let's call it ground of being. God, Goddess, love. You start to know this as an ultimate reality. If we only know the relative realities and never know the ultimate reality, how can we rest in that ultimate reality and become stable? How can we invite others into that spaciousness and to love them? Until we practice both kinds of practice, a mindfulness practice and a pure awareness, resting in awareness. And of course, practices of the heart, like loving kindness and compassion, joy, and so forth. It all comes together. This is what we do at Deep Spring Center. This is what we teach. For the human, I think the greatest gift is the ability to rest in awareness. You do not sacrifice the ability of discernment. This is hot, this is cold, this is wet or dry, this is scary or comfortable. You don't sacrifice it. That's a mundane consciousness. And the facility that opens, rests in awareness, is always there. And learning how to rest in awareness is the essence of it. This is what gives us freedom. This is what sets the human experience apart. This ability to rest in awareness.
Thank you so much, Aaron. We're coming to the end of the show, and I'm so glad that, Aaron, you have come to us and shared these messages. Much gratitude to you.
May I release the body to Barbara?
Yes.
Thank you, Bart, for this opportunity to speak to you and your group. I am Aaron.
With pleasure.
And
I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to give closing remarks, and then you have been listening to Barbara Brodsky. She is the author of her newest book, The Path of Clear Light, and my favorite book, 47 Stories of Jesus. And you can find her at deepspring.org, deepspring.org. And I am Bart Sharp, and this is Becoming Quantum Conscious. I feel like I've been right there with you and Aaron in another space. I'm a little spacey. Not the first time I've had that in my life. However, here on Becoming Quantum Conscious, and this is United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio at 107.7 and 105.3. Uh, Thanks everybody for coming. Next week we're going to have Danny Katz. And Barbara, would you just close the show with telling some of the things that you are doing or wish to share with everybody, and give us one little last bit of wisdom? And you got about 2 minutes.
Thank you, Bart. If you go to the Deep Spring website, you'll see our list of classes and various offerings. There are some, I don't know what you call them, just Aaron speaking on something that you can click on and listen to him. There are live classes, there are retreats and workshops. We have a workshop coming up in 2 weeks in which we'll be talking about some of the things we talked about today. And I think we have maybe 16 or 17 books. Some are available on Amazon and from Deep Spring. Take a look and see what you can find. I think they're all available on our archives. And the closing bit of, I don't want to call it advice, just love one another. Trust your capacity for love, because this is why we're here. And together we can change this earth. There's so much despair out there. There's so much pain. But together we can change the earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. This is very heartfelt talk. Thank everybody, and we'll see you next week on Becoming Quantum Conscious. Many blessings to all, and thanks again to Barbara Brodsky, Aaron, and we'll see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.